No?
Yes.
Okay. I think hello everybody. My name is Tatiana Moore. I'm here on behalf of Dr. Portia Pope. She's the acting director at the office. So I have a few updates regarding mental health. So our health disparities report revealed that nearly one quarter of people in North Carolina said that they had a mental illness. And so with that, the state is expanding peer-led services in North Carolina. And these services are led and delivered by those with lived experience of recovery, hoping to provide support, hope, and some practical guidance to others that are also on their recovery journey. And some examples of those services are what they call peer living rooms, so welcoming spaces where people can go to receive support from trained peers during times of distress or need. Also, peer respite, which are short-term, non-clinical overnight programs where people can receive peer support. Also, the state is working with a committee of peers to revamp the peer certification process to make it more accessible and inclusive. And then there's also scholarships that can help individuals become peer support specialists. And I can drop a link in the chat if anybody wants to learn more about how to become a certified peer support specialist. And then we also have a Peer One line, which is free and it's available 24/7. It's a confidential phone service that's available to anybody who wants to speak with someone if you're having some type of mental health crisis. And that number is 1-855 Peers NC. And of course, I'll put that in the chat. And as I mentioned, it's available 24/7 and it's designed to complement the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. That's all the updates that we have from the state. But if there's any questions, I can give them to Dr. Hope and we can make sure that we get back to everybody. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Hope everyone enjoyed that and had an opportunity to listen in on that. At this time, we have, I believe, Dr. Javita Lee online. Good morning, Dr. Lee. Hi. And you are now, if you are ready, you can begin your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. I will share my screen because I do have a couple of slides. But good morning, everybody. Good to be with you all. For folks that may or may not know me, I'm Dr. Javita Lee. I'm with Advanced Carolina as Policy Director and with North Carolina Black Alliance as the Program Director. So I'm just here to give a couple of updates, legislative updates, and then I will answer a question that Ms. Betty raised to me yesterday around the kind of back and forth with sanctuary cities and things of that nature. So I will go ahead and get started. And so a couple of things to flag. And so the last time I was here, we did talk through HB 127. So this, as a reminder, is the bill that would criminalize voter registration that would be conducted by organizations. And so organizations like ours, like yours, it would become a criminal offense for you to operate a voter registration drive, and they were making it a Class 2 misdemeanor. So that is how the original bill is written. So we do expect an updated version of this bill. So it did come back. It had actually gone to rules way back in like March, and it sat for a while, but they did pull it back out of its grave and allow for it to go and make crossover. That's why we're talking about it again, because we did believe, well, some organizations believed at one point that it would not come back up. Advance did not believe that. So here we are with it coming back up. But again, we do believe that there will be a committee substitute, which essentially is like a new updated version of the bill. We do not have that committee substitute as of yet. So this is the original language. This is where it stands as of now. And so if we get that updated substitute, of course, I'll get that to Ms. Betty and she can share it with you all. What we believe, this is theory, but I do want to share with the group, what we believe is that they will significantly reduce the impact of this bill. The reason why we believe that is because because voter registration is nonpartisan. And so they wrote this legislation, in our belief, with progressives in mind, with Democrats in mind, and did not have their own interest in mind when they wrote this bill. So it's not just a matter of progressives and Democrats needing to be registered. Republicans have to be registered too. And so they did not think that part through when they crafted the original language. And so we have reason to believe that they're going to water this down and not have it to be a full criminal offense. There may be a situation where we see that the rules around voter registration changes. So organizations may still be able to conduct voter registration drives, but there may be a specific deadline, or there may be a specific reporting requirement for organizations for them to have what they believe is a check and balance around the process. So those are some of the things that we're predicting. Again, we're waiting on the substitute, but this is another bill to flag again because it is back in play. And so it was in election law, got stripped from election law. Then it was referred to state and local government. Then it was reversed back to the election law. And then it was pulled again. So we do not have a new committee assignment as of yet for this bill. It was supposed to be heard a week ago. We had folks ready, geared up to be in the building, but they caught word of that and pulled it off. That's only what they do. And so that's where we are with this. So we're waiting for it to be rescheduled. And again, any updates with this, of course, I'll share. But that's where we are now with HB 127. It is unfortunately back in play. Another one that is still in play that we've talked about before is HB 171, which is the original anti-DEI bill that they crafted. This is the one that would apply to state agencies and state government. So this bill did make crossover. It's currently in Senate rules. And so, again, this is the bill that would prohibit diversity, equity, and inclusion in state agencies and state government. So thinking about funding, thinking about policies or initiatives, if there was diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings, if they believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion is included in your hiring practices, all of those things are included in this legislation. And so it has not moved out of Senate rules, so that's currently where it's sitting right now. But this is one that did make the crossover deadline, and it is currently still in play. The other DEI bill, because there's three, this is the one for K-12. So SB 227. This is eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion in public schools. And so this bill would prohibit engagement or advocacy for what they consider discriminatory practices or divisive concepts. This is a term that they've used in all of their diversity, equity, and inclusion legislation, is divisive concepts. We have asked several times for a more definitive definition of what divisive concepts are, or what would be considered, or how would these bills be in practice, because a lot of words on a page, but how would it operate in practice? They do not have an answer. And so we have been asking the bill sponsors, to be more definitive around what they mean. We know what they mean. We can infer, but we want them to say exactly what they mean, and they have not done so as of yet. But this could really damper the way our educators are able to educate in the classroom. And so thinking about, being worried about, okay, am I teaching technically a divisive concept according to the legislature? If I'm teaching about Black history, if I'm teaching about Asian American history, or whatever other concepts, would that be considered divisive? Or is that just me teaching history the way that I'm supposed to be teaching it? And so putting that additional pressure on our educators to have to think that literal as they're educating our students, and then also be concerned around any type of pushback if they are deemed to be teaching divisive concepts. It also would eliminate some of the bias training that educators normally go through, because that would be considered diversity, equity, and inclusion according to their loose definition. And so it would create this kind of chilling effect to where our institutions don't require that kind of bias training or diversity training that's offered to educators. And so this one has made crossover, but it has not been, assigned to a committee. So it's not, so all of the recent votes on it, quote unquote, are old because they have not been assigned to anywhere. But it did make crossover, so that means it's still in play, but it has not moved forward or been assigned anywhere. And it's the same situation for SB 558. this is the one that applies to higher education. So the last one was K-12. This is higher education. And so this would prohibit our public institutions from engaging in or advocating for what they consider discriminatory practices, compelling students, professors, administrators, or other employees to profess their belief in quote-unquote divisive concepts. And so we asked a couple questions around, like, okay, if there was curricula that highlighted, again, like African-American studies or African-American history, like where do those courses fall? Would they be able to continue to teach those courses? And what we presume is no. And then also, this is in conjunction with the already 2024 decision that the Board of Governors made to roll back diversity, equity, and inclusion in our higher education institutions anyway. So this is not the first time that they rolled back DEI for higher education. This started in May of 2024 when the UNC Board of Governors decided that they would completely eliminate and roll back diversity, equity, and inclusion in our institutions. And so this is essentially part two. So this is not the first time that they've had to roll this back. As folks may remember or recall, several institutions have already eliminated their diversity, equity, and inclusion offices as of a year or two ago because that was the result of the Board of Governors decision. So this is like round two of diversity, equity, and inclusion attacks on our higher education institutions. This is one that made crossover, but again, it has not been assigned anywhere, so it made crossover. So that means it's still in play, but we do not have an assignment for the bill itself. Another one to flag that's related to education, this is HB 636. This is titled Promoting Wholesome Content for Students. And so this is technically saying, governing bodies of public school units would be required to adopt a policy for the selection and procurement of library media. And if it does not meet the criteria, then it would have to be removed within 1 year. And so our concern around this particular legislation is this in practice could become a book ban. And it won't just be around kind of the narrative that's been around this bill around reducing, education around LGBTQIA or trans rights. That may be part of it, but this also opens the door for if we want our students to read To Kill a Mockingbird or other literature that is critical to education and that we all came up reading or reviewing in our curriculum. That also could be into play when this bill goes into practice. And so that's our concern, is like, how far are we going to go with the banning of the books? And so to assume that they are only going to keep it kind of strictly to one avenue is not realistic. And so our concern is this leaves the door open for interpretation. And then if there are, books or literature that have been in play for years to come, that, maybe relate to African-American history, Black history, relate to other races or nationalities history, that could also be included in this rollback because it could no longer meet the criteria they make up with this bill. And so that's our main concern around it, is the interpretation, how will it play out in practice, and our concern around this could also impact other literature that we know is critical to the curriculum that our students learn in school. And so this has passed the House, it's in Senate rules, and that's where it currently sits. So this is a bill in play. Two bills that probably have been taken up your timelines, and I'll include the sanctuary city question that Ms. Betty had in my review of these next two bills. So there's two immigration bills that are on the governor's desk. It's SB 153, which is the Border Patrol Act, and this is the requirement that the Department of Public Safety, Department of Correction, and State Highway Patrol, and the SBI cooperate with ICE. So essentially it's HB 10 in Part 2. The HB 10 was passed last year. That was for sheriffs to cooperate with ICE. Now it's creating cooperations with other entities. So the SBI, the State Highway Patrol, Department of Adult Correction, and Department of Public Safety are now the entities that they want to cooperate with ICE. And so this is a bill that's on the governor's desk. It's partner bill HB 318, the Criminal Illegal Alien, quote unquote, Enforcement Act. This is a bill that doubles the time that undocumented immigrants are held in state jails, and it requires sheriffs to notify ICE ahead of their release. So this is essentially another bill where they're trying to create another avenue where sheriffs have to cooperate with ICE, and they are holding undocumented immigrants double the time. And so there was, I believe, a 48-hour hold. They're trying, or it goes up to a 48-hour hold. So they're trying to increase the amount of time that they have to stay. So that way it gives the sheriffs more time to report them to ICE. Like, that's really the goal of this bill, is like to make sure that all of the undocumented immigrants are reported to ICE ahead of their release, so ICE can get to them once they're released. This is also a bill that's sitting on the governor's desk. The question that Ms. Betty raised around sanctuary cities, she sent me something that came out around on the federal level, why some Democrats may have joined Republicans in their vote around the sanctuary city crackdown. And so immigration is a hot button topic. And so if I'm frank, like, folks are already on road to 2026. So decisions that you'll see lawmakers making, whether at the federal level or the state level, are all because of a road to 2026. I don't know if folks have seen that the GOP has already started their advertisements against certain Democratic leadership across the state in certain districts that they want to shake up. So, 2026 efforts don't start in 2026, they start now. And so folks are already campaigning, is my point. Like, that they're not going to wait until January to start campaigning. They're campaigning now for 2026. And so immigration is a huge talking point, a huge button for folks to consider if they want to be reelected. And so that is a part of the motivating factor around some folks maybe supporting anti-immigrant legislation. One thing I did want to note around the sanctuary city part is North Carolina is not a sanctuary state, and we don't have any sanctuary cities. We may have cities or entities that operate as some form of sanctuary, but we have no formal sanctuary cities, and we're not a formalized sanctuary state. There was language that folks were tossing around over the last 2 years that we have effectively become a sanctuary state, but that's just because during Cooper's tenure, he vetoed immigration legislation similar to what we're seeing now. And so as a result of him vetoing it, the narrative became, oh, well, he's effectively creating a sanctuary state of North Carolina. We are not formally a sanctuary state, so I do not want folks to say we are. We're not. And so that is one thing that I did want to clarify with sanctuary cities as well. Now, one thing I will say is there's a few areas that have sheriffs that are not willing to fully cooperate with ICE. So, like, if you think about your Durham counties, if you think about your Mecklenburg counties, think about your Guilford counties, the Orange counties, the more progressive, larger urban counties, they are not in agreement with this legislation. The reason for it is because local sheriffs, especially in these more progressive counties, have built relationship with undocumented immigrants, their families, and their whole point is they want to be able to continue to build those relationships in community and not be villainized and seen as a threat in the community, because a lot of our, we've had a lot going on between community and our law enforcement. And so there are sheriffs out there that are really sincerely trying to rebuild those relationships and not be seen as the villain in the story. And so there are sheriffs within these more progressive areas that are absolutely against the legislation that we're seeing. And so you may hear folks try to claim that those areas are sanctuary cities or counties. They're not. They just have sheriffs that prioritize community relationship over villainizing undocumented immigrants. And so that's what I'll answer the question for Ms. Betty and kind of say on that. But that these two bills are on the governor's desk. And so he has a couple days left, I believe about 6 days left, to veto SB 153, and then 318, I think he has like 8 days left because one went before the other to his desk. Another bill that's on his desk that folks have been hearing about is the Freedom to Carry Act. So that did pass SB 50. That is the one that allows for the carry of a concealed weapon without a permit starting at age 18. And so a lot of us are concerned about that bill because that really does eliminate the check and balance when we think about folks being able to carry a concealed weapon. I know that I have my concealed carry because I got it years ago. But I had to go through a class. I had to get my permit. I had to be checked out before I could get any type of firearm. And I think eliminating that process is pretty dangerous, especially when you're thinking about it starting at age 18. Think about an 18-year-old. Think about the mindset. It could potentially be a very dangerous thing in the wrong hands. And so a lot of legislators, a lot of community folks are speaking out against this bill and are really calling for the governor to veto this one as well, because eliminating check and balance on firearms is really not what we need as a state, as a country, but definitely not as a state. I think it's tone deaf if we think about the amount of school shootings, the amount of shootings, period, that we are consistently hearing about across the state. There was actually a shooting in Briar Creek yesterday. So the gun violence is not reducing by any means. And so we need to be mindful around how much check and balance are we going to eliminate from folks having access to concealed weapons. And so this is on Governor Stein's desk. And so those are the three: SB 153, HB 318, and XB 50 are sitting on his desk currently. And we are waiting on his decision around veto. The last thing I'll cover today, Board of Elections. So as we know, Board of Elections, the makeup shifting has all taken place. Now we have a new executive director. Karen Brinson-Bell is no longer the executive director of the State Board of Elections. The majority now, it was previously a 3-2 split Democratic majority. Now it's a 3-2 split Republican majority for our State Board of Elections. The County Board of Elections will be affirmed 625, so that's the appointed members, and then the members will actually formally take office on July 26th. Some of our potential concerns around the new makeup of the State Board and the County Board of Elections and just kind of how this is going to play out. We see a possibility of aggressive list maintenance, so they could be eliminating folks off of the voter rolls that don't actually need to be eliminated, and that is also a result of what we just saw with the Riggs v. Griffin thing that we just saw between them claiming that folks did not register properly or whatever the case. We do not believe that it died with the decision around Riggs v. Griffin. Even though Griffin conceded, we still think that aggressive list maintenance is still a priority of this new State Board of Elections, and so we are concerned about that. We are concerned that they will take elements of the SAVE Act. Now remember, that's the federal act where they were going to require folks to present a birth certificate or a passport of some sort to prove their proof of citizenship. So we feel like they are going to consider some of those elements in the updated practices of the Board of Elections. We believe that there may be a situation where there could be limits to same-day registration. We do not know, but that is one of the concerns that we have, is that they may limit same-day registration the same way they want to limit early voting. As y'all know, they presented several bills before crossover that were pushing to eliminate or significantly reduce early voting. So they wanted to take it from 17 days to 6 days. So early voting, same-day registration has been a target of theirs for a while, and so we're led to believe that it could potentially continue to be a target. And then personnel changes. Of course, the makeup of the board, the makeup of staff. What will that look like? How will that be into play? And then, of course, how they actually implement the law. We kind of, all of us kind of grew up somewhat accustomed to our previous Board of Elections. Our makeup, folks had a relationship with Karen Brinson-Bell. We kind of, knew what to expect and knew what was what. And we could have a conversation to find out how she would implement election law and that kind of thing. We do not believe that we'll have that open of an avenue now. And so we do have concerns around how will they implement the law, like how do they interpret election law compared to how we may interpret election law. So that's another concern that we have as well. And so that is it for me as far as the highlights that I wanted to make sure I shared with this group. And so I will pass it back to whoever's in leadership for this meeting. But thank y'all for letting me share that.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. We really appreciate